Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. I am Sayyid Akif Shah, lecturer finance at Institute of Business Studies, Kohart University of Science and Technology. The title of this course is Business Research Methods, and the course code for this subject is MS312. This is lecture number 25th, and the topic for today's discussion is measurement and scales while doing a research project. Basically, we are on step number 8. This is a complete research diagram which starts from broad problem area to be identified and then preliminary data gathering. The problem was narrowed down and clearly defined. Then we made critical literature review, on the basis of which we have developed a theoretical framework where we have made a conceptual model and define the variables in detail. Then we have developed the testable statement hypothesis. And the previous couple of lectures we have discussed the research design. Now we are on a position to define or explain the measurement scale for the data collection, analysis, and the interpretation. So basically this lecture comprises of the following agenda point. That is to discuss the measurement scale. Usually we have 4 kinds of measurement scale for different kind of data. So the data can be nominal in nature, ordinal in nature, interval, or ratio. Let's discuss the first scale, which is nominal scale. So related or pertinent to our research problem, the variable may require to collect the data on the basis of nominal scale. Now, what is the nominal scale? Nominal scale is the one that allows the researcher to assign subjects to a certain categories or group. For example, what is your department? So in order to know about the information, you can opt a particular category, that the personnel or employee belongs to the marketing department, or he belongs to production department, or she belongs to the servicing department or accounting department. So here the subject or the interviewer or interviewee or the observee can categorize herself or himself according to the option available. Let's take another example, that the researcher is interested to know about the gender proportion in the organization. So the employees can divide or categorize themselves as either male employee or female employee. So such kind of data collection is known as nominal scale data. Let's take another example like nominal scale. You are required to nominally scale the nationality of the individuals in a group of tourists to a country during a certain years. Like for example, in a Europe like country of Switzerland, the researcher might be interested to nominally categorize the people who have visited from different countries. So we could nominally scale this variable in the following mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive categories. Like the case required the researcher to categorize the tourist into one of the 8 different categories, like American, Russian, Chinese, Arabian, Japanese, Malaysian, gender, or any other. Here mutually exclusive means that if a person belongs to America, then he will not be having any relationship with any other citizenship. And similarly, collective exhaustive means that the summation of all the tourists will be equal to the sample space or the number of tourists who have visited that particular country. Now let's discuss the second measurement scale, which is ordinal scale. Ordinal scale not only categorize the variable in such a way as to denote the differences among the various categories, it also rank the order categories in some meaningful way. For example, if the researcher is interested to know about the highest level of education of the subjects, then the respondents can categorize themselves in one of the following categories, like the subject is less than high school, he has the high school certificate, or might have a college degree or a master degree or similar or doctorate degree. So the subject can identify themselves, or if the researcher is interested to know about the highest qualification level of the employees working in a particular organization, so he might be interested to categorize the employees on the basis of different education levels. So here we can rank that how many people having or how many people possess the master degree and how many people possesses the college degree, and so on and so forth. So we can meaningfully rank the degree holders according to the highest to the lowest degree or certificate possession. Here they rank the following 5 categories. Let's take another example. 5 characteristics in a job in terms of how much important they are for you. You should rank the most important item as 1 and the next importance as 2, and so on and so forth, until you may rank all of them by 1, 2, 3 and 4. So 1 means highest important or high important for you as a characteristic of your job, and 5 means that you are this factor is least important for your job. And the narration says the opportunity provided by the job, like the subject or the respondent is required to mention the importance of any particular factor to his or her job in particular. Like for example, if the job nature asks oneself to interact with the other employees, so therefore it will be most important category for the respondent or the subject. Similarly, if use of different skill is not too much important, you can write down 3. Complete a task to the end is important or not. You can number it like 2, 1, 4 and 5. Let's suppose this. Now you can see that you have ordered the different subjects, like interaction with the other is the most important factor for your job. Completing a task to the end is the second highest important subject matter. Similarly, use different skill is third important factor for your job, and serving other is number 4, and then work independently is your last factor, which is important or less important for your job. So such kind of categorization allows the researchers to rank the important factors. Now let's take another example that this scale helps the researcher to determine the percentages of the respondent, like for different kind of respondents can answer, like 2, 3, 4 or 5 employees can answer interaction with other is rank number first or very important. So after collecting the data, the researcher can determine the percentage of respondents who consider interaction with the other as most important, and those who consider using the number of skill as most important, and so on and so forth. So in this kind of measurement scale, the researcher can find out the different percentages so that he or she may be able to make certain analysis. We can see that the ordinal scales provide much more information than the nominal scales, because nominal scale was just categorizing, like for example, to categorize male and female employees in the organization, but the ranking between the two different subject matter was not possible in nominal scale. However, in ordinal scale, we can order or rank the important factors pertaining to our study. Here in the ordinal scale, the major flaw lies in that we do not know the magnitude of importance in this scale. So this deficiency is going to be overcome in the interval scale. Now what is interval scale? Interval scales let us measure the distance between 2 points. It allows us to measure the distance between 2 points on a scale. whereas the nominal scale allows us only to qualitatively distinguish groups by categorizing them into mutually exclusive or collectively exhaustive sets, and the ordinal scale let us know the rank order of the preferences of the respondents. Like, let us take an example. In the picture you can see that here is a questionnaire which asks the respondents to categorize themselves according to the scale of 1 starting with a very low, and 10 marks or 10 category means that your this subject matter is very much important, or very high priority should be given to this subject. So we can see that the respondent can make a certain category or opt for a certain category depending upon the interval. We can also see that if the researcher is interested to find out how many offices in a particular organization normally have a temperature between 30 and 20 degrees Celsius, or another way around, he can also find out that how many rooms in a particular organization might have temperature between 60 and 80 Fahrenheit. So here we can see that a certain interval has been designed on the basis of which the respondent may answer, or the data might be collected. The major flaw of the interval scale is not an absolute zero available. Like, you can see that the centigrade starts with 0 degree, however the Fahrenheit scale starts with 32. Or we can also make our analysis that 60 and 80 degrees of temperature doesn't mean that 80 is too much high temperature and 60 degrees Fahrenheit is too much less. So the magnitude of difference is once again a problem, because there is not an absolute zero quantity available in the interval scale, which will be further elaborated shortly. Let us take an example of interval scale in which indicate the extent to which you agreed with the following statement as they relate to your job. Once again, the researcher is interested to find out the factors which are related to your job by encircling the appropriate number against each using the scale below. What is the scale? The scale to use is that the respondent can give one number if he is strongly disagree with the phenomena, and the respondent can give 5 number if he is strongly agreed with the phenomena or question asked. So similar nature problem is once again there, and the researcher is interested to find out the magnitude of certain affiliation or the relationship of the factor with job of a particular respondent. The first factor is interacting with the others. Now the respondent can give answer according to the scale of 1 to 5, where 1 means that the respondent is of the opinion that interacting with the other on his or her job is not too much important if he is opting for one option. Similarly, if the respondent might be selecting option 5, so it would have mean that the interacting with the other is too much important for his job. Let's take another example, completing a task from beginning to end. If the respondent is answering 3, it means that he agrees to the statement that completing a task from beginning is important. Here we can see that the magnitude of affiliation or acceptance or disagreement is there, and we can quantify it in a particular fashion. So we can see that the magnitude of difference represented by the space between the point 1 and 2 on the scale is the same as the magnitude of difference represented by the space between point 4 and 5, and vice versa. So we can see a particular magnitude of difference of agreement and disagreement was there according to the scale of 1 to 5, where 1 means that the respondent strongly disagree with the phenomena, and is of the opinion that this particular factor is not important for his or her job, and where the 5 means that, like for example, serving other and the respondent is answering 5, it would have mean that the serving the other people is strongly agreeing with this phenomena. It means that it is highly important factor for the job of that person. So when such kind of data is collected by the researcher, it is known as interval data. Circle the number that represents your feelings at the particular moment best. There are no right or wrong answer, rather you are required to select your feelings only. This is another example of the interval scale where a case is there. Number first, I exert myself too much considering what I get back from my job. Like if the researcher is interested to know or take the preliminary data with the help of questionnaire, and the question says that the employee is actually I exert myself too much considering what I get back. If this kind of situation is true, then the respondent answer will be 5, and the 5 means I agree completely with this statement. And if the respondent feel that he does not exert too much than what he is getting, then the answer would be 1 because he is disagreeing with the statement. Let's take another example. For the efforts I put into the organization, I get much in return. Like whatever the efforts or work done by the employee, he is getting much more better than what he is putting into the organization. If this case is true, then the respondent answer will be I agree completely. And if this statement doesn't make sense for the respondent or it's not true, then the respondent answer will be I disagree completely with the above statement. So such kind of intervals let the individual or researchers to collect the relevant data pertaining to the study or problem. Let's discuss the final scale of measurement, which is a ratio scale, and it is a more powerful method of collecting data. It actually overcomes the disadvantages of arbitrary origin point of the interval scale, which was the deficiency of interval scale because there was no absolute 0 point available with which we can compare the rest of the data. So the ratio scale has an absolute 0 in contrast to an arbitrary point of reference in the interval scale, which is meaningful measurement point. And ratio scale is most of the time used for quantitative studies where a financial analyst is looking to make a study in order to find the correlation between two variables or to make a nexus or relationship amongst one dependent and few 2, 3 or 4 independent variables. Hence we conclude that ratio scale is the most powerful of the 4 scales because it has a unique 0 point reference with which we can compare the rest of the data for analysis purposes. Let's conclude the discussion of 4 different scales. We had nominal scales like splitting the data into groups of men and women. As the name states that here we are only categorizing the data available, or the researcher is interested to categorize or take nominal data only. When the researcher is not only interested to categorize, rather he is interested to rank the data, then the scale used by the researcher is ordinal. It ranks data in some order. For example, exercising for 20 minutes is good for health, for 30 minutes is better, or 40 minutes is the best. So here we can say that a particular ranking has been developed by the researcher, that if somebody exercise for 20 minutes, it's good. If he or she exercise for 30 minutes, it is better. And then if somebody is having exercise for 40 minutes, it is best amongst all. Then we had interval sets data on a continuum, for example, very low, as we have explained with the help of different characteristics pertinent to the job of a particular individual. And the 8 states that such kind of factor is highly important for the job nature. So such kind of interval may be presented to the respondent where he is allowed to select the option of his choice. And finally, we had a ratio scales which starts with an absolute 0 and indicates the proportions, for example 0, 5 and 10. So therefore we can infer on the basis of ratio scale that 10 is twice as bigger as 5 is. Similarly, 5 can be compared with 0, that 5 is almost at a distance of 5 units from 0. Like if we are taking an example of 5%, 10%, so we can say that the company's profit is 0%. At the end of first year it was 5%, and at the end of second year it was 10%. So we can compare 10% with 5 and even with 0, that the company's progress is consistent year to year. And we can also infer that the company's performance on return at the end of second year is twice as much good as it was at the end of first year, since 10 is twice as big than 5. Let's conclude the properties of 4 different scales. The properties of 4 scales can be defined with the help of this diagram. First, the top heading states the highlights of difference, order, distance, and a unique origin. For example, if the scale is used by the researcher is nominal, then he is able to differentiate the categories. However, the rest of the feature, which is order, is not possible, distance is not possible, and the unique origin is not available in the nominal scale measurement. In ordinal scale, similarly, the measure of central tendency is mode. What the researcher can do is to find out the mode or most frequent value. Measure of dispersion is not possible, and some test of significance like chi-square test can be conducted by the researcher. An ordinal data or ordinal scale let the researchers to differentiate the data from each other, and as well as make order or certain ranking of the data or respondents' answers or responses. However, the distance cannot be measured over here, and similarly here is no unique origin in the ordinal data as well. The measure of central tendency in ordinal data is usually median, and semi-interquartile range is used for measure of dispersion, and the test can be conducted as rank order correlation. The third, data lets the researchers to differentiate the data from one another. It lets the researchers to order or rank the data, and it also tells about the distance or magnitude of distance or difference between the data. However, once again, the internal data has one of the flaw, which is a unique origin is not available to compare the data with that specific absolute 0 value. Here the measure of central tendency is a simple mathematical arithmetic mean. However, the standard deviation, variance, and coefficient of variation can be calculated as a measure of dispersion to calculate the deviation of the data, and the statistical test may be used. T and F test can be used for interval data. Finally, the most powerful data and most sophisticated one is known as ratio data, which allows the researchers to find out the difference between the data. It allows the researchers to order the data with respect to each other. It allows the researchers to have particular distance or difference between each other, and the distance between one value and another can be absolutely measured. Similarly, it also provides a unique origin which is usually 0. Absolute 0 is available in ratio scale with the help of which the researcher can compare the rest of the data. Here the mean, arithmetic and geometric mean can be used as a measure of central tendency, and the measure of dispersion are used as standard deviation, variance and coefficient of variation as usual are comparable to the interval scale. And once again, the researcher can perform T, Z and F tests to find out the correlation to make and as well as to test the hypothesis of the study. Here is the important factor or note that the interval scale has 1 as an arbitrary starting point. Like in the previous example, we had this scale or 1 point from where we have arbitrarily taken start. However, the ratio scale has the natural origin of 0, which is much more meaningful in this case. So this was all about the measuring scales and its 4 types. If you have any confusion, you can ask your question on KCMS or via email. Thank you very much for listening to this lecture. Good luck for the day. Allah Hafiz.